Welcome to the Journal of Biophilic Design podcast. Thanks for joining us on the Journal of Biophilic Design today. First of all, we've got some really good news. We're going to be expanding into Australia, and we're going to have an Australian edition of the Journal of Biophilic Design in 2025. And to celebrate this, we are interviewing some amazing Australian designers, starting with this wonderful lady I have with me today, Chintamani. She's a designer, a speaker, and is also committed to biophilic design. She designs eco-friendly spaces that reflect her client's personality and also embraces sustainability, creating these beautiful, harmonious environments for clients and for the planet too. For her, biophilic design gives us this opportunity to make a difference to community, people and planet. Her website is studiochintamani.com, which is absolutely beautiful. So I recommend everybody to go and have a look at it. And it also explains what biophilic design is super easily too. So yes, definitely have a look. So first of all, Chintamani, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It's just such a great honor to be here and to be here with you. And I'm just very, very grateful. Thank you so much.
Oh, bless you. Thank you. Well, I mean, maybe, obviously just a bit of a spiel about, about what you do, but maybe you could tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do, please.
Yeah, so I my journey started recently with actually doing a degree in biophilic design. And one of the things that fascinated me was how I heard about biophilic design in interior design and in architecture. And the thing that really sort of resonated with me is how you design a space and you can impact the brain, you can impact someone's emotions, you can impact on and create biodiversity. I mean, so one of my missions is to actually to really sort of spread that word and also design for people who are actually suffering from mental health and need need help, because we need to actually to really change how we design.
Yeah, absolutely. And for you right now, why is biophilic design like super important right now with everything that's going on?
Um, for me, biophilic design is really important because it has that ability to really establish biodiversity, because when we have 60% of the insects extinct, and in the next 4 or 5 years, the next 30% of what's left is going to go away. I mean, please, everyone, stop using, some of those um, poisons, because, you know, so I also feel like we are definitely at a tipping point.
Mm.
And there is a lot of the school of thought of return of investment and school of thought, we need to save our planet. And so I'm on, we need to save our planet. But if you think about it, biophilic design is the opportunity not only to support mental health, it supports the health of the environment, it supports health of biodiversity, it supports other living beings and things and ecosystems. And like, we really need to actually have a wake up call on what we're doing. And I think that for me, it's yelling in my head. And so we need to actually not just speak to the converted, but we also need to speak to the non-converted as well.
Absolutely. And I think the more we talk about it, the more we share. I think it's happening. It's happening. It's like it's happening over here. I think with like legislation is pushing it through, saying like, for instance, the biodiversity net gain. So people are clawing around going, oh, what can I do? And then they're missing the trick to say, well, actually, you can create spaces that are also good for people, for their sort of for the mental health side of things, also enticing people back to work, all that good stuff, which increases your return on investment. And at the same time, you're having a benefit to the planet. So for me, biophilic design sits above everything. I know it sits
Yeah.
above sustainable design. It sits above designing for well-being. It's like a catch-all design principle that embraces everything. And the sort of obviously biophilia hypothesis is that we love life. We love, and that's what it refers to. It refers to that inherent need to be surrounded by by biodiversity, and but that means eat us as well, and everything else. We need this whole mix. For you, I know that you have this like really you have lots of specialisms, and I sort of I really don't know where to start to asking you so many questions, and it's kind of I'm sure I'll have you back on again to sort of to drill down into some things. But I know you one of your specialisms is like how our brains experience spaces. I mean, maybe can you just kind of obviously because it's about biophilic design, and maybe we can bring it back into the built environment or inside a space or something. But saying, for instance, inside a workplace, can you explain the difference, like what goes on in our brain is say like a normal office, which is like white walled and plain and boring or acoustically crazy, and then one that's biophilically enhanced. I like the word enhanced. But maybe you could explain like the difference, maybe just a few points or something about before and after or something.
Yeah, so one of the things, so just to clarify, as far as the brain is concerned, and this is one of the reasons that I actually really love the research, is that one in four people have experienced sexual abuse in childhood. One in four people experience mental health, and also there was one in five people experience just abuse, just.
Mm.
And so that's an astounding amount of people. So if you're looking at family five, that's a lot. That's a lot of people in that family of five. So for me, when you're looking at biophilic design and designing a certain space, you have to understand how the brain works in say an office. When you're looking at how the brain works now, if it's all white walls, the research is it mimics stroke-like symptoms to the brain, myopic symptoms to the eye. There is no visual sort of just excitement or any acuity. The brain just can't work out where's safe.
Yeah.
What is safe? And when you're dealing with mental health in a workspace, you need to understand, okay, so the employer is actually just looking at, okay, I just want to get the work done, but you have to understand if you have employees and you understand the statistics, how does the brain work in that environment? Now when you're looking at fractals or any sort of design, you're actually affecting different parts of the brain. So if you're looking at cognitive function, you're looking at the midbrain. Okay, that affects the sight, sound, taste, feel, touch, how everything works. So, and also if you're looking at helping reduce the stress, that's a frontal cortex. Or if you're really stressed and have trauma, you're in the reptilian brain. So it's really important when you're designing with biophilic design in a workspace. Obviously, you need to actually think of the sounds. So water, obviously, you're looking at light, whether it's going to be hitting natural light or natural forming light. So whether it hits the cornea and the pineal gland. Sorry, I'm going to get into real technical stuff. So the difference is when you're actually from a white wall, stroke-like symptoms, creating agitation to creating a sense of the ventral vagal comes down, you start actually feeling connected to yourself, being able to cognitively process, being able to actually enhance your ability to think without much more effort. There's a massive difference in biophilic design and stress-inducing white walls. No more white walls.
No more white walls. No, exactly. And like you say, because everybody's going through stress of some kind, let alone, what might have happened to you as a child. Could have had a row or, been on a bus on the way to work and somebody digs you in the neck with a bag or something like that, or somebody's cut you up and by the time you get to work, you're stressed anyway. or somebody just broke into a queue in front of you when you get coffee. Do you know what I mean? Things like sort of third world problems that we might have, but actually wherever we are in the world, we'll always have some kind of stress every single day. So if we can, like you said, sort of stimulate, or would you say stimulate the vagal nerve, or calm the vagal nerve, or kind of
The ventral vagal is actually, you get into a green zone when you're actually you're really sort of chilled and you actually process. So yeah, so it's actually, you chill out with less effort. It's like a melted piece of butter.
Yeah.
You sort of get into, so you're not activate, well, it is activation, but you're actually sinking into it, and it's like a deep breath.
Okay, lovely. So biophilic design does that ultimately, doesn't it? Because it's all those things that we recognize, like the plants and sort of healthy plants and healthy spaces that we know that we recognize. It's universal. It's been with us for like thousands of years. And so therefore our brains go, get that. I understand that. Right. Okay, that's good. I'm safe. I can actually now leave my environment around and focus on work, hence being more productive and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. I know also I'm going to sort of jump around a little bit, but because while you're here, fractals, I just want to say fractals. It's quite weird when you talk to different designers, they have an idea of what fractals are, because we've all done it, or some of us have done it at school, or we might have an understanding of what fractals are. Maybe you could explain a little bit about maybe what a fractal is, just in case anybody's like going, yeah, what's the actual definition of that? Or what is that what does it look like? And obviously how it's connected to biophilic design, and maybe also how it can be represented in practice. So kind of like sort of three parts. No pressure, no
Um,
pressure.
so I've actually started saying, think of a pineapple, that's a fractal. It's something that people can really relate to. Think of a pine cone or a snowflake. They're fractals. One of the things about fractals is that it actually creates this visual stimulation. So because we were obviously for survival, and we were actually over millions of years, well, thousands of millions of years, whatever it was, we actually experienced these, and for our own survival, because our brains are actually connected to survival, and so when we're looking for visually, we actually are foraging for that visual information. So so when we're looking in nature, we're actually foraging where is safe, what we know to be okay, what we know, no, that's not good. And one of the most amazing fractals that you will experience is a waterfall.
Oh.
Because of the patterns and the sound that are actually produced in the waterfall. So it's incredible stuff, because it's not something that you think about automatically. And when we're actually not connected to these fractals, now, just to clarify, one of the principles, as you would know, is visual complexity.
Yeah.
And the fractal is part of visual complexity. To be able to, and there's a high complexity, which sometimes needs to be quite structured, all right, and man-made, unfortunately. But there's only a very fine sort of tolerance for man-made fractals.
Mm-hmm.
It has to be a nature fractal and a mid-complexity fractal. I know this sounds, it's all very, very, there's a lot to it. But what actually happens when we experience those fractals is that we get a 60% decrease in heart rate.
Wow.
And
How much?
and blood pressure, and also in the electromagnetic experience in the skin.
Oh.
So it's like, and this is just by our visuals, what we feel, what we see. And so it all is naturally occurring. You think about when a tree just, is in the wind, it's amazing. But all of that are fractals, all of that patterning, all of that amazing things are fractals. And when we actually don't have fractals in our lives, and because we live in an urban environment, we experience a nature deficit. And so that increases our stress response, that increases our the way we feel, and it also can contribute to sick building syndrome as well, because that that minimalistic sort of soulless type of architecture, really, isn't it? It doesn't have a spirit or a soul or anything like that. So it can really lead, when you're not connected to those fractals or those patterns, it could really lead to some really dire health, sicknesses and illnesses. Not a good idea.
No. So how can we bring them in? How can we sort of bring this in? Is it like a biophilic design thing? What would we, if we were a designer, what would we be bringing in to the built environment?
So one of the things you can do, obviously, it's really important to see if you can obviously do textiles, you can do joinery, like you can actually mimic those natural patterns and natural occurring patterns. You can also look at the different elements, or like seeing out in nature and seeing those different, beautiful trees and different elements that actually create those fractals. Think of the European autumn, where the beautiful leaves just fall down. They're all beautiful flowing fractals. When you're looking at patterns, you can actually, I saw this amazing door. It was a huge double door, front door, and topography was actually etched into this, layered into this beautiful timber door. And it's just amazing. So it's really a challenge as well as a opportunity to really implant these different types of fractals in the environment.
So I suppose you could sort of you can put it in like clean up staircases and things like that, I suppose, as well, which would encourage people to walk up the stairs and are they good at sort of, do they sort of rest the brain? If you're at a workstation, would you want to see fractals near you, or would you want, I mean, I suppose plants are fractals, aren't they? Like snake, like the the Sansevieria and the mother-in-law's tongues, they've got patterns on the leaves. So I suppose that's good for our brains, and that's probably how leaves and things, like the whole sort of biophilic design side of things about bringing plants in, obviously they clean the air and everything, but the visual kind of stimulus on our brains.
They do. It actually creates a sense of visual connectedness without much effort. So what happens is the brain it gets this visual stimulation, and it goes, okay, I understand what this is. So it reduces the effort it needs to actually understand the environment. When you're in an environment like just white walls, the brain just can't compute. Because of evolution, we have to go back to the brain is actually geared to survive, for us to survive. And when we put it in a sensory deprivation, which is white walls, we're actually really get a beating, really. It's very unkind and quite malicious. And so having those medium density fractals, it does allow for that cognitive function to actually reduce as far as the effort it makes, because the brain uses up an enormous amount of energy, and be able to use the other parts of the energy, other leftover energy, if you like, to actually be more creative, to actually function, be more productive, be in the frontal cortex, be able to really have rational thinking. And it's quite amazing how it actually works.
We create schools, for kids. They've got white desks and they're in white environments. If you think about healthcare, it's all white and it's all reflective surfaces as well. So there's no harmony, there's none of this, there's no fractals, is it? I think that's just it, actually. There's blocks, there's sort of blocks. It's like building blocks. It's like, it's not even the top of Lego, it's the side parts of Lego where it's just very functional, very utilitarian, which obviously was a design thing, and it's all come from factories. I mean, I've had a few sort of discussions about this, but if you think about a lot of our design, if we go back at the conference that we're going to have on the 12th of November at the Barbican, so listeners, do make sure you do come, by biophilicdesignconference.com. You can buy tickets on there, but we've got there's somebody going to be speaking about the history of healthcare. They knew that actually being outside, like TB places and that, where you could go outside for fresh air, they knew that that would have a better, better outcome on. And then we've gone like crazy on the other side for this. So that there's no germs, there's none of this, there's no, and which is fantastic, and we do need that, of course. I'm not saying that, but we've forgotten, and also that we need to see these fractals. We need to see patterns of nature, and it's like good for our brains, like you're saying. So it makes our brains happy, I suppose.
I think when you're looking at the brain and the autonomic nervous system, for me, I have experienced a lot of trauma in my life. And so when you're looking at biophilic design and looking at how it impacts the autonomic nervous system, it actually enables that sort of a little bit of a, not always, a little bit of a sort of a breaker between the fight, flight, freeze, and fawn stages of the mental capacity, your brain, and your survival mechanisms. And so when you're looking at biophilic design, it actually is able for you to get back into that ventral vagal, or at least not into the highest point of, going back into the reptilian brain. I'm just here to survive. So when you're looking at designing with biophilic design, it's really important to create those connections to nature, and either if it's direct or indirect, and being able to experience that sense of feeling fear, but also feeling safe within that fear, and having that prospect and refuge, and looking at being able to design spaces that allow people to really feel within their own personal environment as well. And I think that's really important. And biophilic design actually has that opportunity to really do a lot of healing, not just for the environment, but also for people.
Yeah, exactly. And if you're feeling healed and safe, you're gonna heal faster, and if you're in healthcare, aren't you? And also for the families who are coming in to be with their families, or to see a friend or whatever, or if you're just going to have, I mean, it's also you're going to have your blood pressure. I mean, either way, you're going to have your blood pressure taken, and as soon as you walk through those, like, automatic doors, they're just, into like this sort of no natural light, no windows. It's all horrible, and it's scary, and there's noise, it's cacophony as well, isn't it? Actually, maybe that's a nice segue actually to talk about another of your sort of specialisms and things that I know that you speak about is on acoustics, and sort of the benefits of sound on our minds and on our brains, on our souls even, I suppose. Or maybe could you tell us a little bit about acoustics, please?
Yeah, so I am quite fascinated with how sound actually affects. And when you're in an environment with, let's say, open plan, let's do open plan offices. Yay! No. Because what actually happens is that we are really, our ears are actually really connected to pick up human voices.
Hmm.
Okay, so if we have an environment where Bob and Sally are over there, and she's having a great big sort of whinge about, oh, how her friend did something bad to her, and you're trying to do your work, but you can hear this over there.
Yeah.
How does that work? And also, okay, that's one element, but then, okay, let's put you in a box with all acoustic and have no visual stimulation. So the balance, I think, is to understand how each individual and how the ear works. So again, with the auditory nerve, so sometimes if you're neurodiverse, or it's like me, who have my brain is wired differently, I can pick up an octave difference in someone's voice. So I actually need to put my headphones on when I'm at work.
Mm.
I can't, and it's like I can't, I just but how do I connect with people if I'm actually going to tune out? how am I going to, how do we create spaces that actually allow people to be connected and actually have an acoustic environment that actually supports wellness. So I think that's to do with natural sounds, not just blocking sound out, but we need to introduce sound in. And one of the things that I saw, I think it was last year, I was watching a documentary, and did you know that birds that, like, so we might have a sparrow, and their bird song in the city has decreased. I've got in notes, has it actually has gotten louder and shorter bursts compared to their same species living, say, in the Blue Mountains like me. So, noise really is impacting on how we operate and how nature is operating in this world. And so, as far as sound is concerned, we need to actually really have that direct and indirect ability to actually hear those different animals, those different things, and not the hum of my terrible big Goliath desktop. I just hate it, and so I think we need to actually introduce something a lot more healthier for us to actually, because we've got two of these, we need to look after them.
Yeah, it's true, isn't it? Our ears are so important. It's the last thing to go, isn't it? They say when you're passing. Obviously, I've had quite a lot of experience in this just the last few years of people passing away and sound, talking to them and giving them music and soundscapes that can help take them to a nicer place rather than being those awful, 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 acoustically terrible places that are hospitals. So people are, particularly in like respiratory wards and that, where you've got so much sound, so much cacophony, which is horrible. And you're witnessing the frowning and worrying what that noise is, because they can't do anything else, they can't move or whatever, but they can hear these sounds. So I mean, what I was doing, I was saying it was a lawnmower in the garden next door and stuff, and trying to alleviate that. But if you've not got that benefit of having somebody next to you, then to be able to play some water that's falling or some music or some bird song. I mean, I presume there's been some research that's been done in healthcare to show that it's had a positive impact on healing. Or
one of the things that I've recently read was that if you are just designing for the sake of it and not really thinking about your health outcome, you completely miss the actual benefit, and it'll actually have a negative benefit. So timber battens, oh my god, I've got a thing against timber battens because it's not a fractal, because it's a right angle. It's and that's not biophilic design. But I had a heart attack last year, so when I was in that space, it was lots of noise, lots of sound, and I remember waking up, and they had they had the crash cart come to the lady next to me, and I'm like this, and just sort of, how can we create this environment where people can actually heal? They do it in Changi Airport, but they also are in an environment where it's a tropics. So how do we do that in the UK? So in Inverness, where it's freezing, and because temperature variation is actually really great for our system. So how do you do that? Because in like the hospital, with your mum and yourself, you're not only she needs to be supported in that environment which you're there, but you also need to be supported, and so, if I saw a beautiful mural recently with a tomato vine, and it was this absolutely gorgeous waving, and the beautiful leaves that go around the tomato, and I'm thinking, why can't we do that? Why can't we create something that's so visually stimulating, and it doesn't impact on hygiene or anything like that, and it's just amazing in those hospitals where, if they're saying, well, we can't because we have all of this equipment and we need to be careful of the germs in the plants and that. well, then how about we develop joinery and textiles that actually create these fractals, that create this wellness and this cognitive functions and these elevated moods. It's simple, but you just need to want to do it.
Exactly. I think it's as well, I mean, this is where it's all come from. I think I said to you before when we spoke before, but it's this whole biophilic design journey for me came about because the first time my mum was in hospital, they just stabilized her. It was during the flu epidemic. She looked at a picture of nature and she started communing with it. Her blood pressure came down and she walked out of the hospital. And I was like, what's this effect? And I'd heard about biophilia, so I wanted to know what this biophilia effect was. Started researching it, and then because I didn't want to keep it to myself, so I started the podcast and blah, blah, blah. But for me, realizing that just that view of nature, which was printed on chemical resistant metal, you could basically blast it with cleaning. There was no option. They had a pin board up there with loads of crap, with a load of rubbish on it anyway. And I'm thinking, this you can do. And there's so many options. There's vinyl. So I've launched virtual nature walls, which .com, which is I'm trying to get that now, and we're having some success getting it into cancer wards particularly, and sort of other healthcare places. So if there's listeners, if anybody's working in healthcare and they want to do a trial, we're starting to do some trials and some research to show the before and after as well. Because for me, and the whole reason I'm doing this is I just want healthcare places to be better for people. I want schools to be better for people. I want I want the world to be a better place for everybody. It's not just for function. We have to start thinking about people and all life. That whole biophilia thing. We need to love life and everybody and everything that lives, because we're so dependent on it. So that for me is why biophilic design is so beautiful, because it covers everything. It covers that whole respect for each other and for life and living systems and living entities. And if we, and that's what's gone wrong. We haven't been using the biophilic design effect, which is why we're screwing the planet up as well, and each other.
Yeah, that's so true. We really need to actually think about how we, like, the last 150 years, the industrial age, and looking at how we said, let's just leave everything out. Let's not do anything. But they just haven't thought about how we really need that connection. And one of the things, I live in the Blue Mountains here in Australia, and the awe and the wonder that you can see, and how that actually affects me, and how I can actually see the wonder in the world. And it may sound Pollyanna, but then another day we'll have a cheese and wine night, and I can tell you why I see that. But it's just amazing how, when we really have the intent to heal, we have the intent to connect, and we have the intent to actually really connect to this nature that we actually so bonded with genetically, we can actually surpass any of the, I think, benchmarks that we've ever done, because we are, I think one of the things that I was thinking about recently is that, yes, we are connected to nature, and we do use nature or approach nature as an adversarial sort of, we have to defeat it. We can, plunge and pillar and just, do whatever we want. But then nature is actually a mighty force. In 2019, here in Australia, we had those massive fires. And then within months, we had massive floods.
Yeah.
There's no, we need to respect the power that sustains us. And I think, so it's a quite incredible biophilic design in healing, biophilic design in connection, and the potential that it can really plug into for sustainability and, for health, everything.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier about PTSD, or people with stress, and I know PTSD is a is a major thing. And we always, when, oh, well, particularly over here, when people have referred to PTSD and they go, oh yeah, people are, been in the war, been in the army and they've come home, that's PTSD. It's like, no, actually, people can get PTSD for so many different reasons, and it's post-traumatic stress disorder. Or, I mean, I don't like the word disorder because it makes it sound like it's like, I suppose your mind's disordered. I think some of these labels, I think, kind of will make it be a thing. But if people are experiencing it, which we've all had some kind of PTSD at some kind of level. But how do you see biophilic design supporting people with PTSD?
So when a person actually has PTSD, or in the instance for me, I have complex PTSD. So the brain is actually wired differently. So instead of actually being able to live in that ventral vagal that I spoke about earlier, I live on a razor's edge. So basically always, because that's, since I was very little, and I am saying very little, I'd had to actually work out what was safe and what was not. So when designing for PTSD and how it can impact on you. So again, with the auditory nerve, being able to, you can hear, it's wired again differently. So PTSD, your brain is wired differently. So you're needing to actually design a space that you can actually somehow know you've got your prospect and refuge. You've got a place where you can disassociate. So if you're really deregulated and you're hypervigilant, you've got a place where you can disassociate and come back into your body. Or when you're either hypo regulated, which is you've gone stone cold, you've gone numb. So you need to actually to put water in that space. You need to also create, because that's where people will sort of go, yep, I'm fine. And they're not. But that's the way the brain is actually connected to survival. So for PTSD and biophilic design, prospect and refuge, understanding how people can actually withdraw and engage. And actually and water is very, very important. Views of nature, those fractals are crucial when you're looking at PTSD, and even with women who have experienced domestic violence, you've got to actually think about how is the brain functioning in this space, and what is your health outcome in this space. So it's very, very important to think about what, because you're thinking, for me, I just got unlucky. Then you've got servicemen, you've got essential services, like my husband who's a paramedic, you've got my son who is actually in the army. So it is a wide experience and everyone's going to be different. But I think for biophilic design, understanding how you're living on a hair trigger and you can flip very, very quickly and be triggered, biophilic design elements will actually help reduce that blood pressure elements, will also help with the cognitive function, and also have a sense of a bit more lifting mood. So it's very, very, very important.
Yeah, I think there's many things. I was just processing what you were saying there, and the water connection is lovely for me. That water is my thing. I love hearing. I've just installed. I feel quite proud of myself. My mum actually passed away last year, but I inherited. I took. I suppose her this. It was a thing that they bought, which was sort of broken. It was like a it's an otter, a water feature basically. It was a water, it's like a little otters and with the sort of rocks, but it never worked. But my mum really liked it, so my dad painted it, and it was in their gardens, and they moved around and stuff anyway. And it was sitting there, and I was sitting there looking at it during the summer, and I was thinking, how hard can it be to fix that? So I went and bought myself a solar little solar panel, the little gadget, the pump and everything. And I rigged it up. I feel so proud of myself for doing it. But do you know what? I sit out there now and I work, even if it's a bit manky weather, obviously we're in Britain, so it's very unpredictable. We've had a lovely summer, but it's like now going crazy. But I sit out there with my jumpers and my boots on and I hear that water sound and everything's all right. It's like, and I've got birds in the trees and squirrels and things here. Although you're right when you said earlier about there's not so many birds. It's really depleted. It's really sad. It's almost heartbreaking when you think about it. And you do want to. I interviewed Chris Packham, and you can feel the frustration. And I think once you realize it and you can see it and you've experienced it. And I think when you got to a certain age as well, when we were kids, we used to play around and there'll be like caterpillars and worms and everything. And we could sit on the floor and look at them and put them on our hands and really, but the kids don't have that joy, I don't think, as much now because there aren't the variety of species. But anyway, I digress. But the water thing, I sat out there the other day on the chair and I fell asleep. It took away all the stress and all the sort of anxiety because I've got so much going on and it's just. Oh, it was so lovely. So there's a thing about water and actually seeing it at the same time. Is that like a sort of like a double whammy for the brain? Is that like a super thing?
Well, you're getting because the fractals actually impact on that midbrain where you are processing sight and sound. So you're actually really allowing, you're not only getting that visual stimulation through the waterfall, but you're also getting that auditory sort of stimulation. So it is a kind of double whammy. There is a sort of a doubling of effect on the actual your autonomic nervous system. So I think anything to do with sound or smell. I mean, I love a great, like you hear the rain on the roof.
Oh, yeah, me too.
Yeah. And so it doesn't have to be always a water feature, but the rain on the roof or when the wind just goes, oh yeah, it's so amazing.
Yeah.
And it's all the thunder and the lightning and the storm, and I seem to go to sleep. And I don't,
Yeah.
it's so strange. It's like, I just love hearing it. And I've got some beautiful tuned wind chimes that just do the blum, 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 as well. So yeah, I think it's incredible to actually do that water and if it can't be, I mean, I've seen those little tiny water fountains that you just plug in to the thing, like
Yeah.
do that.
Yeah.
But definitely incredible opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's great. And also does it even like this sort of but Dr. Sue, oh, I've forgotten her surname. I did an interview with her, but she's a thing called technobiophilia, and her thing is like you can look at it on a screen, so you can. So I'm also doing these these audio visual things, so that people who can't get out of bed, they can put it on their screen next to them. Or if you're if you're in a workplace, you can have like a second screen or your iPad up. If you've got your main, you can have another screen with even on your phone, and just have this like water going with pictures, and it's so important, isn't it? It's just so lovely just to.
Yeah, it is really important. And the research also says that if you can't get connected to nature, do that screen, do that picture,
Yeah.
do that image. Make sure the picture actually has a path going somewhere
Yeah.
and not just like you have nothing. So make sure there's movement in that picture as well. No abstract pictures, please, because
Yeah.
that causes agitation. But also the research also says that if you can actually see nature compared to a picture, it actually reaches the back. There's a depth that reaches back into the eye and into the optic nerve. So, and the deeper it goes, the more impact it has. So, which is quite fascinating because if I looked at the morning sunrise, it actually impacts my eyes so much that it actually connects to my pineal gland and affects my my serotonin levels.
Wow. So being able to have,
So
being able to have the two, or even the smell as well. So it's about sensory design, isn't it? Ultimately,
yeah,
biophilic design is sensory design,
yeah.
and so many other things. So, yeah, so it sits above everything. So, um, So before I ask you the final magic question, Chintamani, I could ask you so many things, and I've kind of been sort of meandered a little bit on here, but I just you've done so many things as well. I mean, you speak at conferences, and you're always you're a wonderful woman, and you're making a difference in the design world. So thank you for that. And you speak about it from your heart, which is lovely and very refreshing. Um, is there anything else you'd like to add before I ask you the final question?
I think biophilic design has an opportunity. It has the opportunity to heal and heal through biodiversity, heal the soil, heal the environment, heal so communities. Like, to really connect to, and it impacts on communities so much. So I feel like biophilic design has so many. It's not a Pollyanna. It's research based. It's incredibly important to see that communities, people, and the environment come back together into a place into an interconnectedness.
Yeah. So the final question then. If you could paint the world with a magic brush of biophilia, Chintamani, what would it look like? I can't wait to hear what you say.
Um, I think a magic brush of biophilic design. I think we would honor nature. We would treat it as sacred, and we would actually imbue it with reverence. And I think, and then we would actually then be able to really find an integral balance between nature, earth, and humanity.
Thank you for listening to the Journal of Biophilic Design podcast.